because
Hey, what's going on out there, man?
we
Had a
here.
little technical. Hey, we here, man. Had a little technical difficulty at the beginning, man. StreamYard, like they always do.
Good
Say they
Lord.
got high traffic, but guess what? Atlanta traffic even worse.
Better yet.
But quick pop up show, man. Gonna talk a little training camp. It's a wrap up day, actually. Finna get some time off before actual training camp starts. So,
Yes, sir.
OTAs are gone. Mandatory minicamp is gone. So now it's time to get to the grits and the collard greens and all that good stuff. And y'all know that I did say chicken wings. No, I didn't say chicken wings. But
Mm, but you're
we got our
thinking.
nephew. Hey man, we got our we got our nephew Daniel Flick with us, man. He's gonna start through and talk with us right quick. And Chris, you know what to do, man. Go on and shout everybody out, man.
Hey, man. First of all, man, glad to be on this pop up show again. Of course, we have the accredited Daniel Flick. Now, let me do it right. We have Iron Daniel Flick with us today on here on the podcast, man. It's great. Always having him on, man. You know what I'm saying? Been a minute, so I'm glad to have him back on. We're going to do this thing. Chat, y'all come on in because we about to do this the right way.
Facts, facts, facts.
Glad to be on
Daniel,
with you guys. Glad to be on. Truly,
facts.
truly glad to be on.
But it's early on. It's been a crazy off season. Um,
Yeah.
to start it off, I got to talk about coaching, man, because that's what I like to talk about. Um, with the way the Falcons are going to scheme on offense and defense, we're going to look at Michael Penix first. Um, how do you think they will get the best out of him as far as evolving in his second season? I know teams have tape on him now, and he's saying himself that he's worked out a little bit more in the film room, doing these things, studying. But what do you feel like the Falcons got to do to unlock his talent?
I think with Michael, it's interesting because, for the last 3 years, every time we talk about a QB, it's about how everyone's tired of hearing about, how smart he is, how great of a leader he is. Everyone wants to hear about arm talent and all this stuff. With Michael, it's the exact opposite, right? Because it's like you can watch the guy throw the ball, and it's incredible how strong his arm is. And I tell
Right.
everyone, like, when I'm watching him throw routes on air, like towards me, I get scared because if he overthrows one, I'm gonna be in a world of hurt. So it's nice when you can hear so many people talk about how prepared he is and how he's grown, he's talking more, he's commanding more, he's, inside the rooms more often, talking with people more often. So it's really for him, talent wise is not the question, right? And he's so mature. I mean, he's 24, 25, which was a huge story last offseason, right? About how old he was, and it's
Right.
kind of not anymore. But he really is so mature. And I think the one thing with them, it's interesting because a lot of people, when you draft a lefty, you think, okay, the offense is, it'll probably change a lot. It really doesn't. So I'd asked Zach Robinson this a few weeks ago, and he mentioned that 99.8% of Atlanta's offense is the exact same.
Okay.
Like you might change one or two small things, like maybe he's rolling this way or rolling that way for a couple of plays. But with as much time as Atlanta spends, not under center, I mean, it's a heavy pistol team now. That mitigates it a little bit. And then he's so athletic as well. He can throw if he's left, if he's right, like he can throw either way he's rolling. So offensively, they're not changing much. And I think the one thing about him, as opposed to, Atlanta's QB play since probably about 2020, maybe 21, his arm is so strong that it just opens up a quadrant that he can attack that is uncommon. So I think a lot of it really is, I think you'll see more of a longer trying to, expand the field, more explosive aspect to it. But as far as like actual offense, I don't think Zach Robinson's changing too much.
Okay. All right. I got something for you. So
Yeah.
tell me, what's been the biggest storyline or surprise that you've observed so far during OTAs and just so far?
Man, that's loaded. Let me think about this.
Boy,
I think the one that comes to mind is about Kyle Pitts. I think that's
Okay.
natural. He's always a story,
Right.
always a story. And the, trade rumors and all that is a layer that we haven't seen in a while. Um, the story about that to me is that it really isn't a story. I think it was Albert Breer had said that this is really only a story because it's June. And I am in alignment with him on that. It is it's interesting. One, because you look at the room behind him, and I think Josh Simon, the undrafted free agent that Atlanta signed, is a talented pass catcher who Atlanta's high on. But he is the only tight end in that room, apart from Pitts, who I think you would look at and say, okay, that guy could probably catch more than 12 passes in a year. So one, trading Pitts would not make any sense from the trying to win now, viewpoint. And two, they've spoken very highly of him as a talent and of just trying to, refine the small parts of him. So I do think him not being able to, practice isn't great because there are aspects they want him to improve on, and you can only improve so much if you're just in, a room and you're watching plays on a whiteboard or whatever, but I think the story is that story's been overblown. That to me is the main takeaway. If you want to talk about more of like what I've seen on the field, I think it's more of Atlanta's belief that last year's draft class is ready to take the step. Because that leap from year one, year two is often called like the time you improve, really more in that time than at all ever in your career. I'd asked for him about why, and he mentioned just a lot about comfort, a lot about confidence. And speaking with like Rook and like the whole group from last year, there's a confidence and a swagger and like my routine is more refined. I know I need to change this. I should change that. I think Brandon Dorless had a really good quote about this on Tuesday about how last year he said he was just trying to survive and now he's trying to attack, and I think that kind of summarizes where their mindset's at. And so I think on the field wise, that's been one of my main things is that last year's class, for as heavily scrutinized as it was, rightfully so, I do think there's real optimism there that it will be a much improved group this year.
Facts. Okay, and as far as we talk about Kyle Pitts, him having to get back to that rookie season type form, there has been talk going around about Darnell Mooney. To me, at some points last year, he was playing like the number one guy, and there's no knock to Drake London. How does Darnell Mooney take that next step in his offense? And to me, if he gets going and he's that 1,000-yard receiver that we know he could be, I think this offense, is going to be top 5 in the NFL. But what do you feel like Darnell Mooney has to do to take his game to the next level?
With Mooney, quarterback play is such a big part of it for him because I think of all the guys in that receiving room, he is the one guy who I think is in line to really – I think Penix's arm strength, being able to push it deep is a huge asset. Again, I think Mooney ran like a 4.39. It was very quick.
4.38. Yeah.
Yep. It was very, very quick. And he's a guy who, last year even, I remember the 2024 league meetings, I'd asked for him, or it could have been Terry, about what they liked in Mooney. And he mentioned speed, like right off the bat. Right. And I don't think you necessarily saw him stretching people as much last year just because you had a QB whose arm strength wasn't really prohibitive in that. So right. I think you look at it with Mooney as a guy who can really win deep and who can really stretch the field. That's an aspect. I think he's going to be the guy who, when you're talking about trying to win deep, trying to hit, really explosive plays, he's a guy who I think is in line to have a lot more of that in 2025 than what he had in 24. And he's also a really good run after catch player. I don't think he got to really show that as much last year. And I think receiver screens and all that, I think could be an aspect for him where maybe he gets, some action this year. But I think with Mooney, he's just going to be able to stretch teams. And that's an aspect I don't think Atlanta capitalized on last year as much as it probably would have liked. But they know that, he can win there. And I think you finally have a quarterback who not only can throw it deep, but truly wants to throw it deep every chance he gets. So.
Okay. All right. I got a question for you. So of course, with the coaching staff, turnover, now you got Jeff Ulbrich back. Which veteran seems like they're the most energized by the coaching change? Like it seems like they just just playing out of their minds? I know it's early, but it just seems like, you can have that mood that feel that aura. Like, which player would that be? Which veteran?
I think AJ Terrell is really enjoying life right now, to be
Okay.
completely
Wow.
honest with you. I think him and Jesse
I like
Bates are
that.
having a lot of fun. It's interesting because, their line has talked a lot about how Jeff wants to just be attacking and aggressive and all that. That's going to help out AJ quite a bit. But I just think every time I've talked to AJ and he starts talking about what they'll be this year, he feels like he's very excited. And AJ is not exactly a guy who shows a ton of emotion. He's not always like this loud spoken guy, but he seems to have a very, very good confidence to him that is evident just when you're around him. I think he feels refreshed. I think Jesse Bates is refreshed a little bit. And, the one thing a lot of these guys have said is that they appreciate that Brick played pro ball. And like there's an energy aspect of it, yes. But it's also just he relates to them so well because, he's lived it. He's lived in their shoes. And he's been, his track record in New York was really good too. So I just think there's a new level of belief and confidence and trust. And obviously it's hard because, again, they're not showing a ton yet. But, I think AJ especially likes that they're going to be playing a lot more man this year. I asked him about that yesterday, and he said it's a lot more man, a lot more match stuff. And, he's a guy who I think he really enjoys that. So
Right.
you have that, and then you have the fact that Atlanta's pass rush should be a lot better. I think AJ's really having fun. So,
And I love hearing
I
that,
get it.
especially
Yeah.
after he played in the second half of last season, basically being that real locked on, shut down corner. I mean, he was locking people up. So I'm happy to hear that, and hopefully he can build off of that second half of the season and continue to elevate. Smitty, what you got?
And let's keep it on the defensive side of the ball. One name that I brought up the other night on the live was Braylon Trice. Squid Billy talked on a little bit. And we just want to update on Braylon Trice. What have you seen in him, or has he been practicing like that? Because I feel like with his burst and his get off on the football and his pressure rate coming out of University of Washington, I feel like the Falcons got a steal with him on day 3. So what has Braylon Trice been working on since he's trying to come back from an injury?
yeah, so he hasn't been out there. So a lot of the time for him, it's really just meetings right now, and it's working with the strength staff right now and just trying to rehab. The hope is he'll be back for training camp. But, it's interesting because he's a guy who he missed pretty much all of the preseason last year after he got hurt, right? And so it's kind of like he got to live half the offseason last year. He'll get to experience the, really hot part of training camp and the pad part of training camp and the scrimmages and extensive preseason action in 2025. So, no, yeah, he hasn't been out there yet. They're expecting him back for training camp time. But no, yeah, they're optimistic about him. Like the skill set there. I do wonder where he'll fit in from a snap count perspective, just with who they have and how much they like Pearson Walker and AK and Floyd. But yeah, Trice will not be on the field until training camp, and it's still kind of on the fence of whether it'll be 100% at the start of training camp, July 24th.
Yeah, I can understand that. Chris?
Okay, so this is year 2. How does this team feel under Raheem Morris and his new staff compared to last year?
Man, that's a good question, Chris. It's interesting because I think with last year, when you can experience things with somebody, you learn a lot about them. Because again, this is a time of optimism, right? And so everything that Raheem is saying is it's all great, it's all fun. You learn a lot about people when stuff starts hitting the fan, right?
Facts.
And when you've got everyone on the outside questioning you, and you have a back against the wall as a team, you learn a lot. And so the one thing about Raheem, and a lot of guys I feel like talked about last year, he's a very relatable person, a very human-based person. Like, he is a great people guy. Even with me, I like him, and he is a tremendous individual. And I think when you're around somebody like Raheem, he gives you energy. And that's something you can learn about a guy early on. I think Atlanta learned that last year. Right. I think what Raheem does is he builds you up so well. And so there is a level of confidence to where Yes, you went 8-9 last year, even though you were expected to finally break a playoff drought. You were 6-3, and then you ended the year 2-6, right?
Man.
But they're with Raheem, the way that Raheem is and the type of person he is, it's not like there's a cloud hanging over the head, right? So like they've moved on, which I think is important. Because you could for sure let that, dwell and cause some issues. But they're a team that feels like they're starting fresh from a energy perspective, from a mentality perspective. And I think with Raheem, he just puts so much confidence into his guys that it is a team that truly believes offensively it can be a top 5 unit and really should defensively be around league average, which considering where it was last year is a big step forward. So I think there's a lot of belief that this should be a really good year.
I hope it is, man. I hope it is. And one group that I want to see get back on track is these linebackers. You bring in Diablo, you still have Troy Anderson and Caden Ellis.
Yeah.
Then you bring in Jalen Walker to throw him in the mix. And Raheem has already said he has leadership qualities. And I read that from you. But it's gonna be tough depending on how they want to run the scheme. Who do you think gets that green dot? Because you hear Caden Ellis and you hear Divine Diablo, but what if Jalen Walker gets that green dot? Who do you think gets that green dot and leads this defense?
It's interesting. So Raheem mentioned Diablo and Ellis yesterday as the two guys who they could use. I had asked linebackers coach Root a couple weeks ago about Jalen, and he said Jalen was not in their room yet. So like they have not started incorporating him in that role. He's really just been all edge at this point. So
Okay.
I'd be surprised if Jalen got it, or I don't think you'll see Jalen at off-ball linebackers much this year. In the event that he is, that's going to probably take a pretty rapid acclimation process in training camp. And it wouldn't shock me if they maybe try to tinker with it a little bit as the year progresses, but that could also be something they look at more in the future. I think Ellis is the guy in that role. It's interesting because I think Divine, he actually had the green dot briefly in OTAs for the Raiders 2 years ago. That was year 3 in the league for him at that point. So he's a guy who actually has impressed him quite a bit early on. High-level communicator, really athletic, big, long, strong, and a guy who Atlanta feels hasn't yet, just kind of still scratching, what he can be. Because he's not a he hasn't played linebacker that long. I mean, he entered college as a receiver.
Yeah.
He left college as a safety. His first time playing linebacker was rookie minicamp as a pro. So, now, I mean, he's made 42 career starts and has played, playoff ball. He's experienced a lot, but he's still trying to learn how to play linebacker and handle having 300-pound linemen right on top of it. So, I mean, he's still trying to learn and progress. But I think Ellis has such great command. And, I mean, this is year 3 for him here. And he's a leader. He's highly respected. And I think he's a guy who, even with a new coordinator, has such a good grasp of what's happening around him that he's probably – I think he'll end up with the old green dot on his helmet.
Okay. All right. Hey, I like that. Because, I mean, Caden Ellis, for me, I know he's one person that I expect to take, one of the biggest steps. I know he took a big step last year, especially in the second
career year. Yeah, career year.
But I still think he can be a little bit better, and we're going to see this season. So I got my eye on Caden. And speaking of just staying on that defense, man, because there's so much to talk about on that defensive end.
Yeah.
The slot. So I've been hearing some good things about old Billy Bowman. And we already know the pedigree that already the living legend that already is that's starting to be Kobe Bryant within the fan base. I'm just saying, are these guys really a challenge, and should D. Alford be really looking over his shoulder for that slot position?
I think the answer. Yeah, well, it's interesting. Alford. So Atlanta didn't do any starter and starter team periods in camp this week. So I'm going off what OTAs was like. Alford was still the one there inside. Now, the part of it is, I think with Kobe and with Bowman, they haven't really gotten to the point where they're putting rookies in those roles yet. Like they're just not out there with the starters yet. So I've seen people online who've said you have these, guys already like clamping jobs and whatnot. That's inaccurate. I mean, they still have to actually win the job. They have to actually get reps with the starting unit one to actually, prove they, can play in that role at that level on that unit. So I do think that part of it's been a little bit overblown. Now they look good. I'm not sure Kobe ends up on the roster. That's also, a real part of this because they like their cornerback room and they like Hughes quite a bit as the starter opposite Terrell. They like Clark Phillips as a guy who can play outside and inside. They like Kevin King as a guy who can play outside, inside, and even slide back a little bit. And he played some dime packages last year as well, late in the season. Right. So there's a lot of bodies there. And I think with Kobe, a lot of people went crazy off of Raheem's comments on him in rookie minicamp time. And again, Atlanta's high on him. I think there was surprise that he went undrafted, but ultimately, I don't think that the hype that rookies are receiving right now is I don't necessarily think they've proven worthy of it, because they haven't really gotten the chance to prove it. So that's like the other way I would frame this too, like Tuesday, Wednesday, there was a young guy period is what Raheem called it. So you've got pretty much all rookies on the line playing. And I thought Walker and Pierce looked really good, won a lot of reps, but then you put in the context of they're playing a lot of undrafted linemen. I think Jack Nelson was out there. So, but I mean, so it's around 7 guy and then all undrafted guys around him. So they haven't really been thrown out there yet with the ones as much. I mean, you've seen bits and pieces of reps, but really it's not enough to say like, yes, that guy will start, or yes, he will unseat that guy, just because they really haven't gotten to that part of, camp yet. And they probably won't until probably latter part of week 1 of training camp to where they're actually rotating those guys in.
Facts.
Okay,
but
that's why we ask you. We know you're out there, man. That's why
I
want to get the temperature. For sure.
But nephew, one of my favorite articles that you put out was on Xavier Watts, who I absolutely love, and I think was a first round type talent. I remember you saying he was the special, a playmaker and a blue chipper. And it reminds you of Jesse Bates III. But how realistic of a chance that does this kid hit the field early on, because they signed Jordan Fuller and you had DeMarco Hellams coming back? How much of a chance do you think that he could end up in the starting lineup by, I would say, the bye week?
Yeah, it is an early bye weeks. But yeah, I think Xavier, I think there's a real chance. Again, it kind of goes back to what I said about how they haven't really worked those guys in that much. So it's kind of hard to get a real feel of where he's at. I had asked their defensive backs coach a few weeks ago if he has a lean on how that plays out between Jordan Fuller and Watts and Hellams. And he really said the one thing about it is, I expect them to compete. If I had to predict anything, it's that it'll be competitive. And I was like, okay, that's completely fair. And I think with Watts, the thing about him that Atlanta likes so much is that he's proven he can play everywhere. It's not like you have to project anything with him. He's played every role you could want a guy to play. He proved it in college. He proved he can play high. He proved he can play low. He can play too high. I mean, he can do anything. He can, cover guys in the slot. I do think there's a real chance he can play. And, I mentioned this on a podcast earlier today too, that like there are coach speak comments that you get on guys all the time, but there are in like niche descriptive words that coaches use about guys that are not, regular coach speak. And so when you hear college coaches talking about this guy as like a blue chip player, or you hear, Raheem Morris saying he's got captain-like traits, that's not coach speak, right? Like he's not going to come out and say that player XYZ, who they picked up out of, Kansas State College of the Blind, has captain-like qualities, trying to hype him up, right? He would say like, oh yeah, great athlete, long, has potential, whatever. there's a real belief in what Watts brings from a mentality perspective. He's very serious, very hard worker. Again, and extremely talented. And so I think when you have a guy who can play so many roles and who actually is reasonably pro ready and is extremely productive, he's a playmaker. He grew up. He said this when he got drafted. Jesse Bates is a guy that he's watched a lot of, and him and Jesse are already. I think Jesse said that they've spent time in like the steam room together, and they're like watching tape together and all this stuff. So he's got Jesse in his corner. They're already trying to create that strong rapport, and I think there's a good chance he sees the field early. But again, hard to completely predict that with confidence when he really hasn't been out there as much in those spots with those guys. And even yesterday, to cap minicamp, he was working on the side field because they're kind of still trying to not overwork him. Because he had a long college season too. So
yeah, that's true.
He sure did. He sure did. That is fair. Okay. Well, let's talk about a guy who's not a rookie, somebody who going to definitely see the field. And I'm talking about Ryan Nuzile. How much confidence does it feel like that the Falcons have in Ryan Nuzile?
A lot. That's one of the things that it's interesting. It's never ideal when you lose your starting center in week 3 against the Chiefs on the primetime game, and then he misses the next 8 weeks. That's never an ideal situation, right? But I think it actually proved to be helpful for Atlanta long term, because they had confidence in what Ryan could be. And again, this is a guy who's extremely athletic. He's like the top pickleball player they have, great golfer. Any sport you throw at him, he's probably going to be good at it because he's athletic. And I think, but again, you can watch that and you can see him in practice. And I asked him about this a few weeks ago, and even he said, like, practice reps are one thing, but you get in a game and it's just a completely different deal, right? And what he proved to them in that 8-week stretch is that he can handle it. He can handle the pressure. He can handle having 320-pound linemen lined up right over him, and he can handle it. He can handle elite pass rushers. He showed that to them in that stretch. And so it's funny because even like this spring, when he wasn't like actually signed, they were still calling him, that guy. Like, he's still the starter. He's still this. And I'm like, guy's technically not even on your team right now. But regardless, they didn't feel the need to look elsewhere. Like, they made a run trying to keep Drew Dalman in Atlanta. They wanted him there, and he kind of wanted to come back, yes. But ultimately, they had a guy that they felt more than comfortable with. And I think with Nuzile too, just very well liked in that room and very respected, appreciated. And I think he proved a lot to himself and a lot to Atlanta's linemen, Atlanta's staff last year in that stretch, when a lot of guys said that really the play kind of remained steady when he entered, which was a very welcome sight for that offense. So,
yeah, and he's going to have to anchor this offensive line, man, because to me, he's going to have to fill big shoes. Dalman took over after battling it out with Hennessy for a couple of years, finally got his feet up under him, and we know he had all the tools to make it in the NFL because his dad was a Pro Bowl lineman for the 49ers. But anchoring this line, it means too, he's going to be in control of everything. And I know this run game with Algier and Robinson. How do you feel like this run game? How much do you feel like this run game is going to carry this offense this year? Now, I know that they're going to be, passing the ball just a little bit more because of Penix, but how important is this run game still, even though we know we got at quarterback?
Very important. And, again, I think part of it too, their early season schedule is tough. It is not a walk of a schedule early on. So, I think especially in that time, because it's easy to forget with Penix that when he steps foot in Atlanta week 1, that's going to be NFL start number 4 for him, right? Like, this is still a young quarterback. And so I think you'll see them rely on that a lot. Because, again, I think Bijan Robbins, I think the world of him. I truly – it's funny because I see the guy practice. I see him play. I've seen him in person so many times. And he does stuff every single game, every single practice day where you're just reminded of how special he is. And he truly is such an unbelievable player and person, really. But that's the type of guy that when you have a young quarterback, you need to really lean on him. And I think Algier too proved a lot last year as a compliment that he's a true, he was a wear you down guy. He's a finisher too, though, man. And there were runs he had last year. I mean, even like Carolina, he was finishing runs, and he was like, you could tell the impact that he had not only on Carolina but on his own sideline. He was energizing guys. He was physical. He's a tone setter. I think when you look at what Bijan does, he's a playmaking individual, a game-changing individual. I think Algier is just a complete tone setter and a guy who, if you're trying to talk about a team's identity, Tyler Algier does a really good job of trying to enforce you are physical, you are tough, and that you want to close out games. Because, again, with Penix, there are going to be times where he'll have to win them games. And I think with his arm, he is more than capable of that. And I think his legs will be a factor as well at times. Not always designed, but I think he will make a handful of plays with his legs this year. But there's still going to be times when that offense is struggling. You have to turn with your run game. You've got a run game staff that does a great job. Like, I think the world of what Dwayne Ledford can do with his offensive line. He's great in his run game as well. Like he's their coordinator as well, and does a great job with that. So I think the more they've been able to, refine it, and again, having a coaching staff back for year 2 with what Zach Robinson wants, it's only going to help. So I do think run game wise, they're in for a pretty good year, and they have a good run blocking offensive line, man. So I think they're excited about it.
All right. So I altered this question just because you said the rookies, they're not really getting a whole lot of shine. They have like little times and periods, but
yeah,
I gotta know something about this wide receiver room. We already know Drake and Darnell, that's 1 and 2. That's cut and dry. But can a guy like Casey Washington, could he carve out a role still in this offense?
And a big role, I don't think so.
Okay.
It's interesting because I think what's going to end up happening with this offense, assuming everyone stays healthy, I think the year that you're looking at will be a lot like it was last year, where you get a lot of Drake, a lot of Mooney, and a lot of McLeod. And I think with Ray, the thing that a lot of people forget about or maybe don't fully realize is that their offense last year was not supposed to be as 11 personnel heavy as it was. Mm-hmm. They entered week 1 thinking they'd have a pretty 11 and 12. It'd still be pretty heavy 11, but not as much as what it was, because Zach Robinson had said in there that he realized after week 1 that he couldn't take Ray off the field. Right. And so he ended up playing a significant amount of snaps. He had career highs in targets, catches, yards, pretty much everything. And that's not changing. Like, he is still their top slot. He's been their top slot every time I've seen the offense out there, and it's all the starters out there. It's always London, Mooney, and McLeod. So I think with Casey, he's also been, hurt a little bit this spring. Or not hurt, but, he's been on the side field at times as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see it. And I think the question more about him right now, isn't how much of a role, it's if he makes the roster, honestly, because I do think that, Hodge is in there as wide receiver 4. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking a little bit more down at 5 and at 6. And that's where Casey. And I do think Casey. I think Casey's in a good spot. I think he'll make the team, but I think that's more of where he's at right now. Is what can I do to make this team? Not so much of how big of a role am I going to have.
That's fair.
Nice.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
The chat want to know what's your thoughts on Nick Nash so far.
Yeah, what's going on?
It's funny. So I did a story on Nick Nash for SI back in December. And so I'd gotten to talk to his head coach, his offensive coordinator, his quarterback, and him, of course. And it was interesting hearing about how they basically changed their entire offense for him last year. Like, this is a guy who obviously played quarterback. That's pretty well talked about. The part that's not well talked about really is when he went to receiver, he was playing almost entirely outside. And then in a bit of a Hail Mary last year, they moved him inside the slot. And then he was dominant, and they had to completely change their entire offense around him. They call their offense the spread and shred, which I think is the best name I've ever heard for an offense. But, it's interesting with him because he's not very high up in the rotation right now. But again, the only chance we're really getting to judge that is when they're throwing their routes on air. And you've got London on one side, you get Mooney on the other, and then it's usually Ray's after London, and then the other side kind of alternates a bit. With Nash, he's not very high up in that immediate rotation right now. He's kind of like number 4, number 5 on one side, which mathematically would put him at about 8 or 9. But again, the time of year, this last month for him has really just been about trying to get comfortable in a pro offense and get comfortable as a pro. When the pads come on in training camp, when they're doing team portions, when they're in the preseason, he's having to catch passes, that's when he's going to really be able to make his case. But what you do right now when you're just in shorts and all that, not very important. Now, I mean, he's looked fine. I mean, he's not had any bad drops. He's catching passes that are thrown his way. He looks good. Like he's got a pretty good frame on him. He's an older guy, but the actual judgment of whether or not he'll make the team and play, I don't think we're at that point yet. But he's not been a type of guy where it's like he's obviously on the roster. It's not that at all, right? His important days are still probably about a month and a half away.
Absolutely.
Just
going to close it out, Chris.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Just a couple questions. All right, so as far as in these sessions, because that's all there really were, are there any under the radar guys that made a strong impression that you've seen with your eyes?
Yeah, I will say I think Josh Simon had a nice run and catch Tuesday. That was good. But the one thing that I've been trying to talk a lot about lately, Atlanta's interior defensive line is a spot that they chose not to address very much at all in the spring. And what that immediately told me is that they have a lot of trust in last year's guys improving at a high clip. And, Raheem had mentioned with Rook and Brandon, when I asked him about where that next step comes from them and if they're in the process of actually taking it, he said that he's seen it so far in terms of the mental armor, which at the time I'd never heard, anybody use that expression before. So I was like, kind of a cool phrase, but
yeah, I like it.
And then you talk to them and you can just see how confident they are and how much further ahead that they feel right now than what they were at last year and how much more I think they're in line for a really good year. I think they're at least they'll have the snaps, to capitalize on it. And I think with what they've done so far, to the extent that they could, they have improved. They have taken that step. Now, again, Raheem also said we're not going to know for sure on them until training camp and the pads come on and you're actually doing it and you're, executing the job the way it's supposed to be played with pads on and you're hitting guys and whatnot and you're playing at a high level of speed. But there's real optimism about them. And I think that's the one thing that's caught my eye is just that there is true belief, not only from the staff, but the players that they will take that step.
I like it.
One quick question from Ryan on the bird cage. He wants to know what's the excitement level of Doug Williams, the third son of Doug Williams, being promoted to quarterback coach, and what he's brought to the quarterback room.
Yeah, very excited. I love DJ. He is a tremendous individual, and he told me I'm wrong-handed because I am also a lefty like Mike. So he was joking with me about that. But no, he is a guy who's had some very good teachers in his coaching journey. Obviously his dad, but he was with Sean Payton and Breeze in New Orleans, and he's gotten to experience a lot of that. Obviously with Zach, and him and Michael have a really good bond. Because last year, the way that last year's QB room went is that Kirk and TJ Yates worked together a majority of the time when they'd split up. And then Mike and Williams would usually work on his growth and his prep work, however that looked. So they've got a very good bond. And, you know, the one thing about him too, he played at a high level about 10 years ago at Grambling. So he's played the position, highly respected guy. And they made the move. Rod mentioned this in the combine when I'd asked him about it. He said that they wanted to get TJ Yates, who's now their pass game coordinator, into a role that's close. He's now positioned to take over at coordinator if Zach Robinson leaves after this year, which that type of idea should kind of imply how good Atlanta believes its offense will be. But it is interesting. And I think with Williams too, the guy is very relatable, and he's tall and he's lanky and he's always smiling and always really juiced up. So I think he's a great mentor with Mike, and I'm excited for him.
Absolutely. But Chris, if you got one more question, if not, we can roll.
No, man. Thank you, Daniel, for coming through, man, like you always do, and giving your insight. So I appreciate you.
Hey, absolutely, guys. I love hopping on with you. I think it's been a long time, actually. So
hey, man, it's been too long. But we definitely will have you back preseason, regular season, talk some football, because we know you're gonna be busy. But again, we want to thank you for stopping through like you always do. But anybody that don't know you, they should know you by now. If they're a Falcon fan, please tell them where to find you.
Twitter at by Daniel Flick, and then si.com/NFL/Falcons for all of my articles. So yeah, I appreciate you guys again. Glad to join you whenever, and really appreciate all the people watching. It's been fun.
My boy Ryan said he gonna hit you up later, man. He probably want a quick talk with you, but Chris, you know what to do, man. Tell them where to find you.
Hey, man, A1 Forever Sports, the platform on YouTube. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Come on over, have a football, basketball, even a baseball conversation. And it is getting close to 6:30, so I hope you guys have found your peace today. Positive energy always creates elevation. And that's how you find your peace, man. Also, catch me on the Hawks Digest as well. Talking all things Atlanta Hawks. It's getting closer to the draft, roughly about 2 weeks away. So the Atlanta Hawks have 2 selections. We got to get ready for that. Twitter, A1 Forever, Instagram, A1 Forever, and the real A1 Forever on TikTok. Again, great conversation with the Iron Daniel Flick. And I appreciate him coming through, seriously.
Boy, you always come up with them sayings, boy, I tell you.
Come on, man. Got to make him seem like he's coming out about to go to battle, man.
Man, he know he at home, man. He know he at home. But yeah, man, y'all know where to catch me at FatBoySnell_21 on Twitter. Find me at the NFC South Roundtable Tuesdays during the season on the NFC South Roundtable on Twitter. And you can also find me at Smitty Sports Machine on YouTube as I'm pushing out daily videos. And a lot of my content I get from Nephew right there because he's always putting out great articles and there's always something to talk about. But again, Daniel, thank you for coming through, man. We definitely gonna reach out again so we can talk some football. Definitely got to have you on, during the season after these post games to calm these fans down because so every Sunday not gonna be a good Sunday. Let's just put it like that.
Let's just keep it real.
Keep it real. But yeah, man. Thank y'all for tuning in, man. We're gonna roll before StreamYard starts StreamYard again because they've been messing with us already, but y'all know how they do. For my brother A1 Forever, shout out to boy Berto 95 North, Mr. 95 North Falcons Talk Show. Dirty Bird Central Kev and the crew, and we can't wait for the season to start, man.
Shout out to Alex too, man.
Shout out to my nephew Alex, man. He just graduated high school. Shout out to him, man. He going to college and he gonna keep, doing his thing. Y'all go support him on YouTube on his MMA channel. I will post it in my community page so y'all can go hit that subscribe button, man. But we're gonna holler at y'all soon, man, because it's about time for my chicken wing fix. But